Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. The box office for 2024 was down still from 2019. We can blame all the studios for this. They're not making movies that are good enough for people to want to go see, but it's not just wanting to go see the movie. You have to create a movie that has buzz going into it as much as possible and is something that people see as a social event where they want to go see the movie again and again with the existing group of friends they have and with new groups of friends, sometimes family members. That's what's been missing from the box office. I primarily blame Disney and Bob Iger, and I'll tell you why. Going back to 2019, this is from CNBC, Disney accounted for nearly 40% of the 2019 US box office. That's because they acquired Fox and they have multiple brands. They have Pixar, they have Marvel. Disney controls a lot of market share. So what Disney decides to do affects the entire movie industry. Additionally, because they're seen as a leader just by the basis of them having so much market share, other studios are going to follow what Disney's doing. It's a very normal industry kind of thing to do. And not just the Hollywood industry, it's business does this. What's successful, people do more of. So when Disney jumped to making movies that were pushing propaganda rather than focusing on being on brand and making the kind of movies people wanted to see, other studios got nothing but a bad example. And they're still down billions from 2019. In 2019, they did $11.4 billion domestically. And if they're lucky, they'll do what they're estimating to be $9 billion domestically in 2025, even with generally higher pricing and even with premium format movie theaters like IMAX that actually represent a huge percentage of the domestic takes for all movies. In 2025, they're expecting to open 110 movies in more than 2,000 movie theaters, not just Disney, the entire industry. 2025 will see the release of the most wide releases in the post-pandemic era, offering a variety of options for audiences. One of the major issues, though, is that post-pandemic and also as a result of not making the kind of movies that are social events that people actually want to see and care about and talk about with their friends, many people are now opting to watch movies at home instead of going out to the theater because it's just not worth it. Studios have also created a new problem for themselves, the theatrical versus streaming dilemma. Short theatrical windows followed by PVOD releases have been very profitable for studios. But people are now worried that this practice undermines long-term audience loyalty to theaters. Premium large format screens like IMAX drive 35 to 50% of tentpole movie openings, emphasizing the importance of enhancing the theatrical experience, emphasizing the reliance on high-ticket, premium format movie-going experiences, and in my opinion, a kind of a detriment that way because it's not a traditional movie. The more and more high-priced versions of these movies you're releasing, just because they're on a big screen, the more you're dependent on just doing blockbuster after blockbuster. Studios have also found themselves unable to get any excitement going for smaller movies, often then resulting in very small marketing campaigns, which prevents them from being able to generate word-of-mouth success because the movie never actually breaks through. It's probably going to be very unlikely for any smaller movies to get mainstream attention anymore, because they can't compete with all the marketing, promotion, and excitement generated by big releases. This is also resulting in having to do sequel after sequel based on an existing intellectual property and spin-offs of that intellectual property, which if I'm going to make an investment in something, I do want to see something proven, but it does damage the creativity of being able to put out brilliant new movies. It also breaks the chain of expectations if you're a moviegoer to go and see like, oh, I've heard this movie is an interesting story. Let me go see that. You're not really discovering anything if you already know what the movie is about and it's just a sequel. And unfortunately, the DC buzz is not so good. I was expecting they would be very careful to be on brand, but let's put it this way. It's quite difficult to actually produce a movie superhero universe or a comic superhero universe. I had a science fiction comic book universe. It's very complicated. It's difficult to do. But if the buzz is all negative before something comes out, it's not going to be successful. And this isn't just about DC releasing Superman and maybe not being able to make Superman successful. This is about DC Cinematic Universe not working, because if the first movie isn't going to work, then subsequent movies based, say, on the excitement from the first movie are also not going to work. It's too early to say they blew their opportunity here, but it's starting to look not so good. If they don't get positive buzz before this movie comes out, it's not going to do well. It might do okay enough, but it's not going to be a competitive launch like in the excitement days we used to see for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Coming from Deadline, US box office heads for $9 billion in 2025, still far from pre-COVID records. What's an industry to do? Of course, they could go really extreme and just actually make movies people want to see. Listen to what fans are saying. Listen to what people are responding to positively and negatively on social media. Snow White is a great example. Doing that kind of a movie where you're trying to reinvent classic brands, don't ever do anything like that again. But look at what people are excited about, or at least have been excited about over the last few years, and do more of that. It's not something that actually they want to have to do, but they know what they have to do. They just have to do it. The domestic box office is expected to do around $9 billion in 2025, roughly $300 million more than 2024's estimated final figure of $8.7 billion. If it does, it'll be the second time that US and Canadian ticket sales hit that threshold post-COVID after 2023's domestic total of $9 billion. ComScore reports that 110 movies in 2025 will open in more than 2,000 theaters each, which is 15 more movies than in 2024 and the most ever post-pandemic. The new year will even end with a big event movie to carry us over into 2026. 20th Century Studios, owned by Disney, new Avatar sequel, Avatar: Fire and Ash. The previous Avatar sequel, The Way of Water, was released in 2022 and overall grossed $684 million domestic, with $283 million of that total coming in 2023. Movie theaters and studio executives declare that 2025 will be a normal year, untainted by strike disruptions or a pandemic. The anticipated merger of Paramount and Skydance is being declared a great sign, not just because incoming boss David Ellison is a champion of the big screen, but also because two major studios aren't collapsing into each other, which would deplete the supply of movies. And why are studios not happy about this? Even though the motion picture industry can say at least they're sort of recovering, you can't ignore the fact that some $2 to $3 billion remains missing at the box office. The number of frequent moviegoers we've seen before COVID has dropped. Also, the number of casual moviegoers has dropped. We've covered that in another video. And they represented a large percentage of movies. And when those people don't go, there aren't any extra people to get excited about seeing the movie, especially not seeing the movie more than once. The year 2025 will mark 6 years since we passed the double-digit billion mark at the North American box office, the last being 2019 with $11 billion. For 10 years between 2009 and 2019, the annual domestic box office surpassed the double-digit billions mark annually. In 2018, when the box office hit a record $11.9 billion, there were 45 movies that each opened north of $20 million plus at the box office, and 35 titles that grossed well north of $100 million. In 2024, there were 34 movies that opened north of $20 million, and 22 crossed $100 million. One studio boss complained that, quote, if theatrical becomes just an advertising for streaming or PVOD, which we talked about in another video, and that is what it's becoming, the audience is going to begin to understand that, they said. It removes the programmatic reason to go to the theater. It's not just that Hollywood is taking their focus off of producing good movies that people actually want to see in the movie theaters for that social experience with their friends, which genuinely is a one-of-a-kind experience. It's that the industry is moving towards producing movies as promotional vehicles for their streaming service. When that happens, as this executive is saying, people will start to get that and they'll start to understand it and feel it. Not at the analyst level like me or the people in the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, but the actual moviegoers, the consumers. And that will make the movie-going experience even more unspecial for people, even more reason to just say, you know what, I don't need to go to a commercial. I'll just watch it on my streaming service. Former frequent moviegoer Robert Thies, not a special guy of any sort, but he used to go to the movies a lot. He would see a movie, let's say, once a month, and a single father of 4, with kids all under the age of 18. For him to fork over $12 to $16 per ticket, there has to be a compelling reason, and the movie better be good, especially since his time is precious. If Thies wants to have an Alamo Drafthouse experience, a special kind of movie theater, with recliner seats and a highbrow menu, he has to travel 2 hours to Boston, and the closest IMAX screen is 100 miles away in Somerville, Massachusetts. The last movie he saw with his family was Beetlejuice in September. He opted to watch the second biggest movie of 2024, Deadpool and Wolverine, just on Disney+. Didn't need to go to see that in the theaters. And how about regular guy Frank Macaluso? 70 years old, lives in Yorktown Heights, New York, who used to catch all the awards contender movies in the movie theater. Post-COVID, it's more of a comfortable experience to start and stop movies at home. Furthermore, he says, quote, ever since that silent film won Best Picture at the Oscars, called The Artist in 2012, I don't know how people in Hollywood determine what's good nowadays. And we haven't talked about that either, really. The corruption of the awards shows to push diversity, equity, and inclusion, or artsy films that people don't actually care about, that has ruined some people's experience and interest in going to the movies. It did used to be that if a movie got award show recognition, you would see that movie have a bump in the theaters. And that's not necessarily the case anymore because people don't have any respect for the awards because they've corrupted them with nonsense. Post-COVID, there hasn't been a major increase in the number of people who prefer to watch movies in a theater. According to Quorum, an analysis service, that share moved slightly from 45% in 2022 to 46% in 2024. If behaviors were changing in regard to more people attending movies, we'd expect those figures to rise. Instead, they're holding steady. When it comes to tentpole movies, big blockbuster movies, with 30 to 46-day theatrical windows until PVOD, which is your paid streaming services, or your digital video rental, there's plenty of evidence that shows there's no cannibalization of a movie's ticket sales thereafter. Before Universal implemented their 18-day window for focused features titles and 30 to 46-day window for movies opening north of $50 million, they conducted an immense amount of financial research, particularly how each window cascades from theatrical into PVOD, then streaming windows on Prime Video or Netflix. The theory is that marketing and P&A costs, that's promotion and advertising, creates efficiencies achieved by overlapping the theatrical window with that of PVOD, which has pretty much been proven out that it is worthwhile. So they could spend a ton of money on promotion and advertising for a theatrical release and use that theatrical release to then get people to watch it on a streaming service, download it as a digital video rental. It does work for them, and that momentum they create when they're promoting the movie is something they can then extend that to their digital sales, and they need that to generate revenue. They continue. Essentially, a movie is at its greatest level of consumer awareness during its first 2 weeks of theatrical release, hence the reason why the PVOD frame is dated so close. Universal's DreamWorks animation title, The Wild Robot, went on PVOD after an 18-day window and made an additional $55 million at the box office, ultimately finaling at $143 million. It also benefited in a full marketplace in which it was one of the only family films. Universal also took Twisters, which overperformed for an $81 million 3-day opening, into homes on PVOD after 25 days in movie theaters. It made almost $44 million in box office after that point and ended its domestic run at $267 million. And if you think it through, what the analysis really tells us is that if the movie is truly a good movie, if it's a movie that you're excited about when you go to see it, and then after you see it, and you talk about it with your friends, and you talk about it on social media, if it's got good buzz going into it, if it's got good buzz coming out of it, that's an experience that it won't matter if they sell video on demand or they put it on their streaming service. You'll still want to go see it with friends in an actual movie theater, because that is a one-of-a-kind experience. But when that movie theater experience isn't unique because the movie just isn't that interesting and it's not worth talking about, or if the movie is just plain not good, then the movie experience is going to fast evolve into this promotional vehicle for studios to push these movies out on digital rental and streaming services, which moviegoers haven't caught on to just yet, but they will catch on to. And as that executive said, once they do, they've completely ruined the moviegoing experience and they're going to crush their business. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.